Survival War Measures of Humanity. Our last-ditch hope. If we want to achieve survival, or at least to fight for it, the lifestyle of those mainly responsible, to be exact, of about 1 billion people, of whom again the military and the lifestyle of a few rich and super-rich have a large share, the following 2 billion together just as much, while 4.6 billion contribute hardly anything to this catastrophe, must change radically, reduced to the most essential, until the industries have been substantially modified. All industries and businesses that do not produce for the most basic needs must be shut down or reduced to a minimum, such as military, car, motorcycle and truck industries, likewise construction projects, etc. etc. Then everything William Moore explained on YouTube must be done in the sense of an enormous worldwide ecologizatio in billions of variegated ecological restoration projects, while at the same time huge, finely structured irrigation systems have to be drawn across the continents, including the creation of wetlands, swamps and bogs. Then to transform agriculture in a way that hardly any pesticides and fertilizers are needed. Then to free the oceans and land masses from all the plastic, pollution, etc. A global renewable energy system, mainly with solar energy from deserts, has to be installed in no time. And that as much methane hydrate as possible is removed from the seas and hermetically sealed. It is inevitable that direct air capture plants for the extraction of greenhouse gases become part of the solution, as well as by means of a solar radiation management, for example the Mere Reflection project. It must be attempted to cool the Earth as well as to replace a reduced or failing global dimming effect, until a greenhouse gas sequestration out of the red zone is achieved. Furthermore, to call on people to take responsibility for reducing the number of the birth rate, so that the world population decreases over time. These emergency and central tasks are impossible to be managed as long as the world is organized on basis of monetary means. Those measures are simply not to be financed. Keyword: competitiveness, the ability to compete in a stupid monetary economic struggle for existence. Our salvation would only be possible if we overcome the monetary world system by preparing the internet in such a way that the entire world is realigned, reorganized and restructured in the shortest possible time on basis and with the interconnected and networked power of voluntariness of each Earth inhabitant. For its survival of humanity and of all life on Earth. All of this together, even if it is the most daunting task ever imposed on humanity in the face of its demise, is thus our last-ditch hope. See YouTube, Dr. William Moore, Humanity's Mortality Moment. December the 11th, 2019. Channel Facing Future. Today Dr. William Moore, one of the 5 co-authors of the World Scientists' Warning of a Climate Emergency, explains the nature of the emergency, what we must be doing about it and the encouragement for diversified forest management. In more detail. What has to be tackled now for a survival? With or without decimation of the world population by wars and pandemics. What needs to be tackled now to achieve survival, to save our planet, our life, world and existence, and what we need to discuss in citizens' assemblies, in all forms and forums of participatory democracy all over the world, how this can be achieved and implemented. Starting from the altitude and attitude. We do not only have to give up our individual trips by airplane, pausing it until the engines are modified, as for example into liquid hydrogen airplanes which were already developed in the 50s by Lockheed with the CL-400 Suntan, as this was done later on by the Soviets with the Tupolev Tu-155. As this counts for cruises, cargo and container ships, whereby we have to test it first slowly, what would be the impact on the climate and the environment. But we also and mainly have to give up and pause mass automobility and logistics the same way. Use automobility only for emergency cases or heavier logistic transportation at close range. For the rest we have to put electrified rail-bound systems onto highways and national routes, as well as to transform the cities in such a way, in combination with bicycles or other forms of micromobility. But we also have to give up meat and dairy or to reduce meat consumption to an absolute minimum. The same applies to fish products. We have to give up our oil, gas or coal heating systems at home. We must shut down all coal, gas and nuclear power plants. More on it later. Worldwide as soon as possible or even immediately. Instead, we need to install a global renewable energy system as quickly as possible, taking mainly solar energy from the deserts. Mass solar panels and/or wind turbines are not a solution. For this we must give up national or regional protectionism and the associated extreme global monetary economic competition. We also have to give up planned obsolescence, the technological as well as the psychological, means instead of having daily calls to buy this or that or to travel from here to there, we need daily appeals about the true state of emergency of this disaster, to reach an emergency break in the daily life of everyone and to live for a while on the most existential. We have to recycle almost everything, creating industries. Therefore, we have to stop all kinds of waste incineration. We must carefully reprocess all coolants, preventing it that they leak into the atmosphere. We must stop the clear-cutting and slash and burn clearing in forests, especially in virgin forests. We have to give up using pesticides and fertilizers largely, as well as overproduction, abundance and wasting. We must stop all superfluous and unnecessary mega construction projects. We must take all possible measures to extract about 120 ppm, or 2 to 3 trillion tons of CO2, or depending on the development even more, from the lower atmosphere as soon as possible through massive ecological restorations, the creation of vast wilderness areas, wetlands, bogs, swamps, underwater seagrass landscapes, etc. Possibly storing plants and trees deep underground after an appropriate growth. We have to think about creating huge irrigation areas in combination with desalination plants in order to raise groundwater levels. First and foremost, everything must be done to stabilize the various ecosystems of the earth. Big game hunting and poaching must be stopped immediately and prohibited. We must rid the oceans and land masses of plastic and all other littering and pollution, including nuclear pollution to the extent possible. We have to give up military operations and maneuvers at sea and on land, the gigantic military machineries. We must come together and work together as an Earth population. Trade agreements, trade conflicts, trade wars, as well as military operations and wars for raw materials and resources, transit, trade and economic routes and/or markets, in order to defend oneself against competitors, to push away competitors or even to eliminate and destroy them, must be completely abandoned and stopped. The same way it has to be abandoned, that everything is done primarily to generate money, more money than competitors, to improve one's competitiveness, to maintain an economic existence, in order not to be possibly bought up by competitors or forced to offer everything for sale in the end. For this we must, as already mentioned, give up and overcome the global monetary economic competition utterly and completely, by switching the global financial system, computer systemically, off, or to eliminate it after a crash. Ultimately, the inherent influences, effects and ramifications of monetary systems on human societies would have to be completely reversed. This is impossible, as long as this instrument continues to exist, as well as it is impossible to reverse gravity on Earth. All that, to induce and to implement all these rescue measures in a timely manner, is only possible if the world organization is continued purely through the networks and a networking, via the digital systems as well as a personal one, locally on the ground. Conclusion. All this great transformation would only work out, if we end the monetary era, switching it off computer systemically, to remove it from the networks, if we make it to transfer the world organization, running now mainly via the monetary world system, completely onto therefore prepared global digital networks and networking to a defined time and specific date in the near future, which would have to be implemented globally within the next months in order to save our planetary life world, together with our mere human existence, or we will more than likely not be able to stop the turbo effects and feedback loops anymore, means that within a few years, few decades, we will disappear together with our collapsed planetary life world in the dust of deserts. Instead of money and trade, networks and networking. Or instead of production, money and trade, distribution. Production, networks and networking, distribution. Everything needs to change, and it has to start today. Great Greta Thunberg. Don't ask what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for the whole world. To nuclear power plants. They will sometime blow up in our faces in the event of an abrupt rise in temperature, which is apparently taking place at present, including prolonged droughts and falling river levels, as they require many months of uninterrupted and intensive water cooling, as well as an appropriate power supply, even after a quick shutdown, so that a meltdown is prevented. At least as far as inland power plants are concerned, whereby those located on sea coasts are in turn threatened by the then strongly rising sea levels, see Fukushima. Now it's all about to set up an internet platform that works similar to the Map of Tomorrow, see cartyvonmooringen.org for English language. Click on EN. Only that it has from the beginning the intention to realize the seemingly impossible, namely that the world frees itself from any monetary constraints, and thus positions itself as one world, or rather as humanity, against the catastrophe. An internet project, a hackathon, which as an open source project is constantly developing, so that at the same time people can be addressed to register in it, to push this world and existence-saving project, as an ideology-free, concrete act, and to spread it virally, including the creation of local person-to-person networks on the ground, for example for elderly or for people without direct access to the World Wide Web, etc. Where everyone can register, where, at which location, with what and with which basic work, or occupation time, about 20 to 25 hours per week, he or she intends to participate. Further, he or she enters approximately what is needed for the respective life, temporarily reduced to the essentials. For example, the use of motorized means of transport would have to be abandoned, with the exception of ambulances, care of the elderly and sick, or unavoidable heavy load transports, simply because, if one is allowed to drive around with it, the other 1 to 3 billion owners of such means of transport may do so as well if we still want to stop the worst developments, for example from the ice-free Arctic. For the time being only muscle-powered and electrified rail-bound means of transport can be deployed and utilized. Then that on such a world network map it is also visible where the respective consumer goods can be picked up, distribution points of all kinds, stores and shops, etc. All in all, that it is clear for all to see how local and partly international production and distribution chains work. It would be important that the largest part, ultimately all people, companies, undertakings and projects are asked to register. For the time being just on a virtual level, but from a certain point in time, due to the given time pressure spoken in months, is prepared to the extent that the whole world can continue to function purely by this networked power of voluntariness, on a certain basic level, as a foundation, without monetary means being required or used. This applies in particular to the key sectors, food and water supply, the installation of a global system of renewable energy in a short time, which mainly uses the power of the sun in deserts where there is only little life, which is then possible because monetary protectionism no longer needs to be considered and adhered to. Communication systems, digital networks, health and elderly care, education, mobility, logistics and transport, cultural life, etc., etc. And, most importantly, all projects for the fastest possible removal of about 2 to 3 trillion tons of greenhouse gases from the atmosphere, especially through billions of nature restoration projects, all projects to stabilize our global woodlands and ecosystems, including the creation of meanwhile necessary irrigation systems, in addition the construction of millions direct air capture plants in suitable locations, plus mass initiatives to clean up the oceans and land masses from all kinds of waste, especially plastic, etc., etc. Only if such a platform is rudimentarily laid, this could lead to a real chain reaction, because people can then see that another world is possible, that we can free ourselves from the monetary constraints, which these means exert on the world society, that we can eventually escape thereby the meanwhile very probable demise of mankind. The fact is, the establishment of such a fallback level is now of utmost importance. This should be the zeitgeist of humanity or the state of world consciousness since 20 years, or since this is possible through the digital systems. Planetary emergency. Planetary general alarm. Disaster control measures. Terraforming Earth. Don't drive a car anymore. If one car is allowed to be used, about 1 billion cars in the world can be used as well. This applies to all means of transportation with combustion engine. Apart from ambulances and heavy load transports, no battery or hydrogen-powered cars may be used for the time being either. The industries for this are to be shut down, except for the production of mentioned exceptions. The same counts for airplanes and shipping. Animal breeding programs must be stopped. No further inseminations may be carried out on an industrial scale. Also, industrial fishing and aquaculture are to be stopped. Clear-cutting and logging in forest areas are prohibited. Instead, they have to be massively reforested on a continental scale, including the creation of necessary irrigation systems. Planning and construction of a global renewable energy system, which is almost entirely powered by solar energy in suitable desert areas. Integrated in it the digital world network, or the digital network systems. Simultaneous shutdown of all nuclear power plants, coal and gas power plants that are no longer needed due to the shutdown of a large part of the industries. Restructuring of the industries and agriculture to supply all regional populations with the necessary goods, in each case to the extent that they can be brought into unity and harmony with the natural systems. Possibly repeated CO2 sequestration by continuous new plantations in connection with deep underground storage of wood with its absorbed carbon, as far as possible hermetically sealed, or to use it as a building material. According to the catastrophe, the motorized individual means of transport production would have to be paused, and or completely stopped, as well as their use, as so much other things likewise. Neither electric nor hydrogen-powered automobiles are in this form and in this situation appropriate and justifiable. That to mediate or to represent as an option and perspective, is extremely irresponsible towards the reality of the planetary endangerment situation. In order to reach a future at all, in order to be able to continue a historiography for people on this planet, in order to stop to delay or to prevent absolutely possible worst-case developments and scenarios, regional chains of help and supply must be set up hastily over the networks as one of the first immediate measures, over which those who are physically fit and trained enough do support those, for example old people, families, single mothers, etc., by means of all kinds of muscle-powered means of mobility and transport, for example bicycles, cargo bikes, bicycle cabs and buses, etc., with all vital consumer goods, are available for errands of all kinds, so that the motorized automobile, whether electric, hydrogen or combustion engine, individual transport can be completely stopped for the time being. Only for absolutely necessary ambulance missions, medical and heavy load transports such may be used at the moment, according to the dangerous situation in which this planet, the humanity itself, is situated. To summarize, in this situation we are in, a total emergency brake is required. This means from one day to the next we have to shut down all industries in this world that do not produce for the absolutely most existential, such as all car industries, including truck and motorcycle factories, aircraft and shipbuilding industries, all military industries, there with many steel and aluminium factories, etc., etc., so that already a large part of the nuclear, coal and gas power plants can be shut down in a very short time. Also have to be stopped or reduced to the most limited, construction industries and cement factories, electrical industries, tourism industries, animal breeding and fishing industries, wood industries, etc., etc. In turn, implementing the Mere Reflection project, and the execution of gigantic ecological restorations, the creation of irrigation systems for woods and agriculture, for wetlands and bogs, biotopes of all kinds, and this at the highest speed and on a global scale. But which doesn't go together with labor markets, social systems, and especially, financial systems, international power structures, competitiveness, etc. So, the last possibility we have is to prepare the Internet, or World Wide Web, in the shortest possible time in such a way that it is the only organizational platform, in order to realign, reorganize and restructure the whole world anew. Proposition. Manifesto. Global Alliance Pro-Survival. The Great Transition and Transformation of Humanity. Demands and goals, toward all governments of all countries, but especially to all people in the world, including ourselves. Consensus for survival. Non-monetary latest in 2021, or after a crash of the world's financial system. Preparing the various networks for a smooth transition. Introduction and implementation of all disaster fighting and emergency measures. Immediate end to all deforestation and clear-cutting, especially in the primeval forests. Stop all armed conflicts, wars and social struggles. Give up national or regional protectionism, coming together as a world society, in a universal and unlimited cooperation. Daily disaster alert calls to confront this natural disaster, achieving an emergency break in the daily life of all the people of the world population who are mainly responsible for this disaster. Immediate supply of the basic needs of all Earth inhabitants, inclusive ending the starvation catastrophe. Taking all measures for the fastest possible extraction of greenhouse gases from the entire atmosphere, as well as compliance with all the other planetary boundaries. Together with all necessary measures to stabilize the various ecosystems on Earth, including massive nature restorations in the form of wilderness. Structure formation of self-sustaining networks of various kinds, in participatory democracy, for local to global issues and tasks. Transformation of the world economies and human life in accordance, in unity and in harmony with natural processes, circulations and cycles. Remove the monetary world system from the networks and from all human societies. Peace and love. P.S. The symbol in the background of the Global Alliance text is a mixture of the currency sign, a character used to denote an unspecified currency or a placeholder for a concrete currency to be added, and the symbol for the Internet. According to my considerations, the placeholder would remain open, which would mean that there is no more a currency, or that the common currency that is in circulation would be a sense, a feeling, a look, an awareness, a contribution to the success of the whole. That there would only be a global alliance of millions of types of local regional districts, municipalities and communities participating through structures of various forms of participatory democracy, connected via the Internet and the World Wide Web, etc. In the whole to be a global society in universal and unlimited cooperation, in which all the different resources and tasks are shared and exchanged, in which we work together for the benefit of all people in the world, using the power of the networks to determine the respective needs in general from the sum of the needs of each individual, at the same time to connect the different individual intrinsic inclinations, bents, tendencies and skills in millions upon millions of different projects, enterprises and ventures, craft workshops, etc. etc. This in largely self-determined individual, local and or regional self-sufficiency, thereby also in a constant interaction and interplay with the universal, with the rest of the world.